Good afternoon. Welcome to IACET's Application Assistance Webinar. My name is Randy Bowman, and I'm IACET's Vice President of Technology and Organizational Effectiveness, and I'm so pleased that you could join us today. This webinar is being recorded, and we do hope to have it available to participants within 48 hours. Now, before I pass the presentation on to our presenters, I'd like to let everyone in attendance know about the Zoom webinar features and the follow-up email everyone will receive after today's webinar. The Zoom webinar control bar is located at the bottom of your screen. You can use the different buttons to control your webinar experience. On the far left, you will find a button to control your audio settings. If you need to adjust how you are listening to the webinar, click the caret pointing up to expand the menu and change your listening options. If you get any kind of feedback or the audio starts to degrade, you might need to click on that and change to the telephone option. The second button from the left will open the chat box. This is where you can interact with other attendees, staff, and even the presenter. If you want to communicate with the panelists, the presenter, or staff, change the recipient to all panelists. Chatting with all panelists and attendees will display your name. Why don't everyone feel free to open up your chat box and say hi to everyone. See all who is here today. So hi, Jorge and Rebecca. Good to see you, Karen, Tina, Sophia, Crystal. Glad all of you are here today, and we hope you find this presentation helpful. Now, the next button that you'll see in the Zoom bar is the Raise Your Hand button. During the question and answer session, you can raise your hand, and then we can unmute you so you can ask your question verbally. We might also use hand raising for quick straw poll. So everyone go ahead and raise your hand right now. Let's see them raised high. Yay, I see them coming in. Thank you all. So the next button during the webinar, feel free to use the Q&A module to ask your questions. At the end of our presentation, one of our staff members will moderate the questions and ask the questions verbally to the presenters. To send your question, type in your question in the box and click the send button. Other attendees will be able to see your question. So if you want to protect your identity, make sure you click the send anonymously checkbox. If a host or panelist answer your question via the Q&A box, it will appear below the question. Sometimes questions are saved for the end of the presentation to be verbally asked to the presenters. Finally, the last button is real apparent, I think, but if you do need to exit the webinar, just click the leave button to quit. Now that you're prepared to engage, I'd like to take the time to introduce you to our presenters for the session. On the line with us today are Karen LaMarche, IACET's Director of Accreditation and Training, and Norina Columbaro, one of IACET's lead reviewer commissioners. Karen is a recognized leader in the adult and continuing education with over 20 years of experience in higher education and continuing and professional studies. Karen joined us as the Director of Accreditation and Training in November of last year. She has served as an IACET commissioner prior to that. She's reviewed dozens of applications, and we are happy to have her with us today. Joining her today is Norina Columbaro. She also has over 20 years of experience in the adult education industry, has led organizations through the accreditation process, and has been a commissioner with IACET for several years. She's reviewed hundreds of applications. As a published researcher on adult education, Norina also leads our Train the Trainer workshop, as well as several other of our workshops. Her research and work has been published in Adult Learning, the International Journal of Teaching and Learning in Higher Education, and on military.com. Now that we have all that boring administrative information out of the way, let's get to the meat of why you are here and learn about the process to become an IACET accredited provider. Please help me welcome Karen and Norina.
Thank you, Randy. We sure do appreciate that welcome. As part of IACET's mission to improve the quality of continuing education and training worldwide through accreditation, we bring you this webinar each month as an opportunity for you to gain an understanding of the application process, as well as to allow you the opportunity to ask a commissioner some of your questions. This webinar supports the IACET mission in providing you with the information you need to make a decision about accreditation with IACET. When an organization becomes an accredited IACET CEU provider, they also get one more thing, a competitive edge. With IACET Continuing Education and Training, you can tell the world your company is committed to best practices in adult learning and professional training, and that it has successfully mastered IACET's rigorous accreditation process. IACET offers workshops, webinars, downloadable and printed resources, industry research, and more to organizations pursuing training and accreditation, continuing education and training benchmarking, and process improvement. We guide learners to accredited providers. Our CET Connection newsletter and other resources provide the general public and accrediting bodies with continuing education and training information. We want to foster a greater understanding of the ANSI IACET standard. By the end of this webinar, you will be able to identify steps of the AP application process, as we will walk you through all the steps involved in accreditation. List document requirement types for the initial and renewal application. We'll give you a description and a couple of examples of each type of document. Identify the location of additional resources available to applicants, and we'll show you where you can find more information on the IACET website. Plan for next steps in the application process. We encourage you to take a moment at the end of this webinar to jot down next steps for you and your organization. To be clear, these learning outcomes are provided to also exemplify that any learning event should have learning outcomes that are compliant with the IACET standard and that are SMART: specific, measurable, achievable, realistic or relevant, and time-bound. The standard and application are bundled together, and those are available on the IACET website for $495. The application fee and annual membership fee for initial application is due upon submission of your application in the online portal. The initial application fee is $4,290. The fee for reapplication or reaccreditation is reduced to $3,275. The annual membership is $1,095. If you would like your application expedited, you can elect to pay an additional $1,650. The application fees include the staff review, the initial and subsequent reviews by 2 IACET commissioners. Please note that if a third review is required, there is an additional $450, and we'll talk about the third review as we progress in the webinar. There are 9 categories within the application, and each category has at least one element associated with it. For each element, you'll find guidance given in the application to help you understand what you must submit. It's advisable to read through the entire application and the embedded guidance to have a clear picture of how it's organized before you begin to upload your documents. In just a few minutes, we will review the standard categories. Upon submission, the application is reviewed by staff for completeness. This will not be counted as a commissioner review and will not count against you. We will make every effort to have this initial review complete in 2 to 3 business days. Once the application passes the staff review, 2 commissioners, a lead reviewer, and a site visitor are assigned. Each commissioner reviews the application independently. The commissioners will consult each other throughout the entire process. After the initial application review, usually about 4 weeks, the commission will either approve a site visit or do another review, which is common. Keep in mind that 95% of applications are sent back after the commissioner's initial review. If the first 2 reviews do not answer the commission's questions, the third and final review will take place and requires a fee of $450. Let's look at the steps. Step 1 is the staff review that we just talked about, and it's conducted after the application is submitted. Oops, let's go back to 2. Step 2, the application will either be returned to the applicant or it will be sent on to the commission for review. Step 3, once the application goes to the commission, there is approximately a 15 business day turnaround to either send the application back to the applicant or schedule a site visit. During this phase, there is also an optional phone call that can be requested by either the applicant or the commissioners. Before you resubmit the application to the commissioners, you will have a chance to talk with them about anything in which you need further clarification. Most likely, the application will be sent back to the applicant in step 3. If that happens, then in step 4, the applicant will have an opportunity to revise and amend the application before the second submission to the commissioners. The second submission review will take less time. Typically, the second review will result in the applicant being approved for the site visit. This frame shows the 2 review cycles. Step 5. During this step, the site visit is scheduled, conducted, and turned into a report based on the results of the site visit. Once you have been approved for the site visit, the commissioner who will be conducting it will reach out to you to schedule the visit. They will work with you regarding the timing. Site visits typically take 4 to 6 hours to conduct. During the site visit, the commissioner will verify that all the information in an organization's application is accurate. The site visitor may ask questions about specific items on the application and may ask an organization to confirm responses with evidence. Everything that is required by the site visit will be given to you prior to the site visit. And I can tell you right now that currently we're doing virtual site visits and using SharePoint for you to upload your materials. So here's an overview of all that we just covered. And so you'll know all the timelines can be flexible. So if you find that you need more time to reply, please contact our offices and let us know. We would rather you submit an application of quality than to rush through it just to meet a deadline. What to expect during the site visit. When IACET notifies you that your organization has been approved, the commissioner site visitor will contact you to set a specific date and time. The visit can usually be conducted in 1 day by the site visiting commissioner. The visit is designed to be as non-intrusive as possible and should not involve more than a few people within your organization. Before the visit, you should make sure all your materials as requested in the accredited provider application are readily available for the site visitor. And because we are conducting these site visits as virtual, you'll be sent a SharePoint connection email that will provide you a place to upload the materials for the site visit. During the site visit, you and the site visitor should get acquainted. You should provide the site visitor with an overview of your organization, its purpose, and your role in continuing education and training. The site visitor will discuss the twofold purpose of the visit: to validate the accuracy of information provided on your application and to share with you the role and responsibilities of an accredited provider. The site visitor will review with you questions on your application and ask you to verify with evidence your response to the questions. The site visitor may ask you to provide additional examples of materials that demonstrate how you are meeting the standard. These examples may already be included in the materials you have gathered for the site visitor. Keep in mind, the site visitor is attempting to ascertain whether your organization is following the ANSI IACET standard. The site visitor has been trained to gather evidence to support the applicant's adherence to the standard. However, the site visitor will not act as a consultant for your company. The site visitor is prohibited from receiving any gifts or services or from any further consulting with your organization. It is entirely appropriate for the site visitor to meet and talk with others in your organization. They can be included in the virtual site visit. Such contacts and meetings should be brief and informal to allow the site visitor to complete their assignments. Upon conclusion of the site visitor meets with the organization's representative, that is, the same person the visitor started with at the beginning of the visit. The site visitor may offer general impressions and comments about factual matters, but cannot offer interpretations and opinions about the final decision of the commissioners. The site visitor must complete a report of his or her findings and forward it to the lead reviewer commissioner, who completes the final report. The report is then sent to the applicant regarding the decision of the commissioners. If you have questions about what to expect during the site visit that are not answered here, please call our offices at 703-763-0705. Now let's take a look at the 2018 standard categories. The ovals illustrate the instructional design process. These are the categories in the standard that look at how learning events are developed, beginning with needs analysis, following through with development of learning outcomes, content and instruction, assessment, and then evaluations. The boxes across the bottom of the design model show categories 1, 2, 3, and 8 as the administrative side of the standard. The standard categories, as illustrated in the model, provide organizations with the framework to adhere to quality, continuing education, and training practices. Adherence to the standard provides a systematic approach to identifying and analyzing learner needs. The ANSI IACET standard helps continuing education and training providers establish an appropriate responsibility and control system, encourage an analytical approach to identifying and analyzing learning needs, design, plan, and execute a quality learning event, establish appropriate assessment criteria based on the learning outcomes, monitor and improve the learning process in order to achieve its objectives. The ANSI IACET standard also emphasizes the importance of continually reviewing and improving education and training to ensure the development of quality programs that meet consumers' needs. Here is one of the key takeaways from today's webinar. Reviewers or commissioners need to see what the actual audience sees. Is it employee, contractor, instructor-facing documentation and evidence, or is it learner-facing documentation and evidence? And now I would like to pass the presentation over to Norina, one of our lead commissioners. Thank you, Norina.
Thank you, Karen. And hello, everyone. Good day. I'm going to start out our discussion about the different types of documentation that is part of the application upload and accreditation. And first, I'll do that by introducing you to some information from a blog article on IACET CET Connection publication. And policies provide important communications to internal and external stakeholders, instructors, administrators, and learners on the expectations of participating with the organization in a learning experience. So policies are documents that provide an organization with the primary principles and tenets for how it conducts its business, how employees should conduct themselves, and what customers can expect. Policies that guide an accredited provider's learning events are an essential piece of evidence in the accreditation process. So let's examine the critical elements in a policy and what the reviewing commissioners will expect to see in an application for accreditation. For simplicity, it may be useful to organize policies into a singular policy manual for distribution to appropriate stakeholders. Applicants will find using a template when writing policies will be helpful in keeping the documentation uniform across the application. Policy should be written into the fabric of the organization and not just written for the application. As you can see, there's a policy sample in front of you. And again, you can choose how you want to format these that work best for your organization, but these are just some examples. Bottom line is there should be dates of adoption, revision, and a policy should be current, and the form should capture the dates for any changes on the policy. The commissioners need to see that a policy has been in place for at least 3 months before the application was submitted. An organization should also look at any particularly old policies and see if revisions are needed. The next element in a policy is approvals and owners. For a policy to carry weight, you need to identify its responsible party on the document. The commissioners reviewing your application will want to see that your organization has identified the person or role responsible for the policy and who enforces it. A good policy will also designate the policy owner if that is different from the approver. For policies to be implemented throughout the organization, all policies should have and maintain high-level leadership buy-in and approval. The next element is description. What is the business need for this policy? The description is the narrative that describes the policy and the need for it. The why. The description is not the actual policy, but instead introduces the policy and why it exists in the first place. The description can show the relationship between the policy and the broader organizational mission. The policy provides your organization parameters around how to achieve its mission. In other words, what is this policy trying to accomplish? For example, a policy for hiring qualified personnel is required by the standard. The next piece of the policy is the standards and definitions. The core of any policy is articulated by the standards of behavior and service that the policy is describing and enforcing. The goal of the policy is to create uniformity within the organization and is a written guide how employees and contractors are to act. Policies also let customers, clients, and learners know what they can expect from your organization when they attend your learning events. And then one final piece of the policy that is very important is consequences and non-compliance. And what your commissioners are going to be looking for is that your policies include details for reporting any violations and consequences of the breach. So for instance, phone numbers, et cetera, or what the steps are in case that policy is in fact broken. Policies don't have to be long. As a matter of fact, the shorter the better. However, it is essential to keep in mind that policy is not the process required to implement. And if we go to the next slide, it shows that the different elements that require policies are throughout the application. The majority of these elements will also require supporting evidence documents to demonstrate how the policies are transmitted to those responsible for implementation and adherence. The commissioners will also want to see documentation that shows that the learners are informed of these policies that affect their learning experience in the learning event. Next slide, please. Thank you. The next type of documentation, in addition to policies, are processes. When documenting processes, there are several things that you're going to want to include in your process documents. The process objectives, description of the process, why it's needed, and when it is performed. The position assigned to the tasks should appear on the organizational chart. In addition, the process needs to include what is needed in the form of tools and information to be able to perform the steps and what reports, checklists, and other documentation is required to ensure that the steps are followed accurately. The sequence of activities that make up the process need to be included. Step-by-step instructions provided to an employee to complete the task is necessary in these process documents. In addition, we need to see the tools used to complete the process. These tools could be checklists, templates, or other forms used to follow the procedures. IACET requires applicants to submit documented processes as an essential part of accreditation for the standard. Accreditation of the standard confirms that your organization can consistently design, develop, and deliver high-quality training regardless of changes within your organization. While reviewing the application for accreditation, the IACET Commissioner, reviewer, will expect your process documents to include all the parts that we had just discussed, and you'll see it there: introduction, responsible parties, inputs and outputs, the process, and this is very important too, the sequence of activities that make up that process. And our process documents do require that level of detail. And then finally, the tools that are used to complete the process. As mentioned earlier, checklists, templates, or other forms. When submitting the application for accreditation, these tools need to also be completed and submitted as evidence. Some important considerations during the process. Process is implemented as a result of the accreditation process, as just like with the policies, all processes must be in place for a minimum of 3 months before submitting the application. For every process that requires evidence in the application, you need to be able to provide evidence from an actual learning event tied to an actual learner. The IACET required process document is more in-depth and contains greater detail than commonly used in processes required for other certifications and accrediting bodies. So keep that in mind as you are putting together your process documents. Next slide, please. Here are some examples of processes. Sometimes flowcharts are used in processes, but oftentimes we find that the flowcharts don't provide enough detail for the step-by-step. However, a lot of times the sample processes that we have available to you in the resources once you purchase the application will be very good guidance that provide the level of detail and some ideas for you. Again, just like policies, we provide ideas for you, but we don't require that you adhere to every detail of the formatting in some of our resources. Here's another example of a sample process. And again, they need to be formatted and consistent. And so please keep that in mind as you are reviewing your current process documents, as well as modifying them in preparation for IACET accreditation. And as you can see throughout the application, there are several areas that you'll be required to upload process documents that reflect your processes in the different areas and categories. And then the next step, the next part of what you will be uploading is your evidence for that shows that you are carrying out your processes and policies as outlined. And the evidence supports the notion that for every process, and in many cases policies, that there is a tool that is employed to ensure proper adherence to the process. Next slide, please. Some evidence examples to show that you are actually carrying out your processes and policies may be emails to learners. It could be pages from handbooks or manuals, both from staff or instructors, or other documents used in required policies and processes described by the standard. And as you can see throughout the application, for every policy and process that we are asking you to provide, that there is some opportunity for you to show us some evidence that you are actually carrying out those policies and processes. And as Karen mentioned earlier, our evidence needs to be learner-facing, employee, public, and contractor-facing. We need to see what the end user sees. All right, so let's see how I did with communicating this. So for many of the elements in the application, you must have, and this is for participation, full participation from the group. Do you need to have A, the policy or process, B, proof that you follow the policy or process. C, a video of a staff member following the process. A and B, or B and C. So please go ahead and respond in the poll.
So attendees, the poll is live. It should be on your screen. So you can go ahead and just click what you think is the correct answer. And we'll give you just a few more seconds to finish up your answering. We look like we got about 80% of the people who have answered. So we'll go ahead and end the poll and share the results.
Oh, good. All right, and excellent job. Most of you got A and B, which is the correct answer. You need to have a policy or process and then proof that you follow that policy and process. And even if you did select just the proof, that's great. You're on the right track. So very good. All right, next slide, please. Now, as Karen mentioned earlier, there's two main parts to the application. We look at your operations, but we also look at your instructional design methods as well in those circles that you saw at the top. And in order to provide evidence to show your instructional design processes, et cetera, we need you to be able to provide evidence from what we call exemplary courses. And so we want to see evidence from each type of course that you provide as a learning organization. So if you have live courses that you provide, we're going to want to see evidence from that live course, or one exemplary course that represents the live courses. And when we talk about live, we talk about face-to-face in real time. Now, recognizing that with COVID, a lot of us are moving on to Zoom. So this is actually considered live in real time. So we'll be able to, you'll be able to upload information and evidence from that type of course. Then we also, if you offer both live and distance learning, we're going to want to see examples from an exemplary course that represents a live course that you offer, as well as a distance learning course, such as an online course or self-paced. And then there's hybrid blended. So if you have a mix of your delivery modes, and then you also offer that particular delivery mode in a course, then you're going to provide us evidence from that type of a course as well. So if you only offer live courses, you'll just give us evidence for a live course. If you offer live and distance learning, you're going to give us evidence from 2 courses then. And then, of course, if you offer all 3 types, then you're going to give us evidence from each type when the application asks for it. Next slide. So now that we talked about initial accreditation, we're going to move into reaccreditation. So after 4 years, then you will be teeing up for reaccreditation for your, and the nice thing about reaccreditation is it's really simplified. It's streamlined for you. In the initial accreditation, you're spending a lot of time giving us your processes and your policies and evidence that you're using them. But in reaccreditation, we're going to be expecting that you're already using those processes and those policies. And you're going to provide us narratives and some updates of what's been going on in the last few years. And what are some organizational changes, as well as what are some areas where you have continuously improved and grown as an organization. You will also provide exemplary courses for each delivery mode, just like I mentioned earlier, for the initial accreditation. And we'll have an opportunity to look at that, those courses as well. And then just like the initial accreditation, there will be a site visit where we will confirm your adherence to the standard as well as what you provided in the application. So overall, when it comes to applying for accreditation, commissioners usually like to provide these tips to people in order for us to be able to move through your application as effectively and efficiently as possible. It's important to have clear language in your documentation, and as well as any comments that you make within the application. Also, please make sure it's organized. Make sure that that you upload the proper evidence, the proper processes in the right categories within the application. It certainly makes it a lot easier for your commissioners, and it benefits you in the long run of having a quicker turnaround for your application. In addition, what you're going to be doing is you'll be putting your documentation in PDF format, and you'll be uploading PDFs. And sometimes the PDFs might have a lot of pages in it. So please make sure you highlight any sections that are relevant to that particular requirement in the application so that your commissioners don't have to try to do a scavenger hunt and try to hunt down what part of that documentation is relevant to that particular category and element, or provide excerpts of that particular document that is relevant to the category and element, please. Next slide. All right. And so with that, we'll open it up for any questions.
Hey, attendees, we do have some questions that have come in that we're going to answer live, but I'm going to lower everybody's hand. If you would like to make a verbally ask your question, feel free to re-raise it and we will unmute you so you can ask your question verbally. So, Karen and Norina, one of the first questions we have is, how has COVID affected our AP review and approval turnaround times? Can we plan on the standard times that have been communicated in this webinar and in other webinars, or are there delays?
Well, I'll take this one. No, no real delays. What we're finding is everybody is having to pivot, or they've had to transition this past year in getting their documentation ready, because suddenly they have to offer courses that are on Zoom or that are being offered through distance learning. But I can tell you that the approval process, the accreditation process, has pretty much, we've tried to stick to the timelines that you've seen displayed on the infographic that Norina shared with you, or that I shared with you earlier. We've been sticking to those timelines pretty effectively. Although, as I said earlier too, we are a little bit flexible with you, because we know that business is just not as usual. So we do want to work with you as much as possible so that you can put forth a quality application.
Thank you. So another question we have here is, if an institution is an accredited university that offers degree programs, but they also offer continuing education, should the application provide the university guidelines for each of the standards and elements? Or should all new policies, processes be developed specifically for IACET's accreditation?
Norina?
Do you want me to take that one? Okay.
Yeah.
All right. It depends. I know this isn't a really straightforward answer. If you have HR policies that are in place, particularly around performance evaluation from the university level, you're going to use probably that, right? For your employees, et cetera, et cetera. But if you have some specific ones, particularly around your instructors and hiring them, you may have to have some specific processes around hiring instructors within the continuing education arm that might be different than the academic side. So you need to be able to consider that as well.
Thank you.
So for instance, maybe like, for instance, you may require a PhD on the side for academic, where you may not require a PhD in on the side of continuing education instructors. So that's just one example.
Okay, so we got another question here from Sophia. She's a small company. Her training organization includes only her as the full-time employee. She does occasionally use freelancers, but she wants to know if IACET has accredited companies that are like hers before.
Yep.
Yes. In fact, we range from 1 to 2 shop or organizations to huge corporations. And that's what's so good about IACET is we don't tell you how to run your business or how things have to be done, but we do say that for quality continuing education and training, here's the standard. Here are each of the categories. Here are the areas that you need to consider and you need to address to have that quality education. So it does work for 1 or 2 people operations. It's a lot on that, the fewer people you have, of course, the more hats you wear, as you already know that. But yes, it can be done. And we work with quite a few organizations that are smaller operations.
Very much so. And it really is about 1/3 of our organizations are under 10 employees.
Yep.
So here's a good question that we get sometimes. How do you demonstrate compliance with a standard regarding the awarding of IACET CEUs for 3 months when you're not yet authorized to award them?
Am I taking this one? I take it. Thanks. What you want to do is you want to at least mock up stuff for us. Give us a mock up, like for instance, in one of the categories, we ask for your certificate or some kind of proof that you are communicating to the learners whether or not they successfully completed the requirements for CEUs. So at the very least, what we'd like you to do is mock up what that documentation would look like with that language, so we can see that ahead of time. So we do recognize that in initial accreditation that's not going to happen. Now, reaccreditation is a completely different story. We do expect to see that. So I hope that answers the question.
Great, thank you. Next question here. Is it best to put the policies, processes, and evidence in the appendix of the application or in the body of application in the proper section? And if y'all don't want that one, I can handle it.
Yeah, because I think you can take this one because you're the expert on the application. You created it.
So our application is actually an online application. Once you purchase the standard, you automatically get access to the application module in our IACET portal. So it's not a Word document or a PDF document that you're going to be building, that you're going to be answering. You're actually going to be using a web application in our portal. And it is going to have a little box under each element for you to provide the proper evidence for that specific element. So there's not an appendix or anything like that that you'll be able to do it in. It will be a question with a box that you'll drop a file into and say that this file shows the evidence for that particular question. All right, how are we doing on time? We've got some time, so we've got a few more questions here. Some of our online programming I would like to be included in the accreditation is already developed and available to the public from our organization. Would these older modules be eligible for accreditation along with the modules we develop after we are accredited?
I'll take this one. IACET accredits organizations as accredited providers. We don't accredit courses. We don't approve of individual courses or anything like that. So as you're going through this accreditation application, you need those courses that you've previously offered because you're going to need those to show evidence of evaluations that were completed during that course. So we definitely want you to use those courses. And then once you get accredited, any course that you develop after that, before your reaccreditation 5 years later, those fall under the umbrella of your accreditation because we accredit you as an organization. We're looking at all your policies, processes, and then the evidence that you provide to us. And we're saying, okay, you meet the standard. And so anything that's developed and delivered under those policies and processes, they fall right under, you may award IACET CEUs for those courses also.
Thank you, Karen. Looks like we have time for this one last question, and then we can go on with the rest of the webinar. So in the application reference guide, under please submit the following, there are some items listed in alphabetical bullet points. Are these everything that must be submitted, or are they set out as different options to submit? So is the bulleted list and, or is it or? You may have to look at the document, right? And get back to us.
I do know that specifically in the application, in the portal that Randy was referring to, our accreditation management system, it is very specific. It'll tell you exactly what we need. If it's a policy or if it's a process, that might be part A of that particular element. And then B might be provide evidence, show us a completed document, a completed worksheet or form or something like that.
Right.
So, and there's always guidance. There's the standard, the category, and then there's guidance before each of the elements to let you know, here's what we're looking for in particular, something that tells us about this. And it may even put examples in there. So, you know, that's why we said read the application, try to go through the whole thing initially and look at it and see what are the kinds of things that we're asking for. And then of course, we're going to talk about resources in just a few minutes, but they're also extremely helpful as far as identifying the different kinds of documents that you need and what are the components of those documents.
Right. Thank you so much. We do have a few more questions that came in, but we do need to go ahead and move forward so that we end on time. I will try to answer the questions that have come in. I'll try to answer those for you via the chat box or via the question and answer box. And if I can't, then we will get with you after the webinar and follow up with you. So.
Okay. We do have some online resources on our website, and it's highly recommended that applicants utilize all resources when working on the IACET application. Once the ANSI IACET 2018 standard and the AP application have been purchased, you will see that additional online resources will become available to the IACET website. You'll find several templates and guidance documents that will help in writing processes, course design documents, learning outcomes, and much more. So what are your next steps? This webinar was designed to give a general overview of the application process. Please, if you want to, I believe Randy said that you'll get a recording of this if you want to listen to it again or provide it to other people so that other people on your team so that they can assist with you. We think that's a great idea. We always recommend that you attend an accreditation workshop to get a more in-depth look at the application and the pieces your organization must submit during the process. If you have additional questions that were not answered in today's webinar, please feel free to contact our office. I'll be glad to answer any questions also. To wrap us up, we wanted to let you know about just a few of IACET's upcoming events. In addition to the Accreditation Assistant webinars, IACET is pleased to provide high-quality professional development webinars. As a special treat, we are offering the first 2021 completely free. Join us to hear information on 2 brand new IACET seminars and a revamped course. You will get to hear from the facilitators of the following seminars: revenue growth and project management and marketing strategies, as well as our open digital badging program. You can find more information about these on our website and in upcoming newsletters. And we've got those on the slides there. So we've got one tomorrow with the open digital badging. We hope that you can join us and listen to James Willis. It gives you a great opportunity to meet the instructors, hear what they're going to be talking about, and see if that might be the right course for you. Any organization currently seeking accreditation or reaccreditation, or any accredited organization who may have new employees that may not be familiar with the IACET accreditation are encouraged to sign up and take advantage of one of our accreditation workshops. These are intensive, engaging learning experiences designed to guide you through the foundational concepts of the IACET standard and how to apply them to your training operations, while also providing insight on the documents that you will need to include with your application for accreditation. Our next workshop is going to be our reaccreditation readiness workshop. It focuses on documentation for reaccreditation and is great for those who are already familiar with the ANSI IACET 2018 standard, but they need to prepare for reaccreditation. If you're preparing for reaccreditation but are not familiar with the ANSI IACET 2018 standard, please register for one of our Introduction to IACET accreditation, because we go through all of the categories in the standard to make sure you understand what's required and what is needed. Attendees of this webinar today receive a one-time $50 discount on registration. Please just email alexa@iacet.org to get your discount code.
I think that concludes our webinar for today. Thank you so much, Karen. Thank you so much, Norina. And thank you, all of you who are interested in accreditation. It speaks highly of you and your commitment to quality education, that you've joined us today and that you are seeking this avenue. And we certainly hope that accreditation is a right fit for you and your organization. To everyone attending, we're so grateful for your involvement. We hope you found the information useful and are excited to begin digging into the application. As we've said, if you have any questions, don't hesitate to contact the office. We're very responsive to answering questions. So please go ahead and contact us either via the website, email, or give us a phone call. Thank you so much and have a great day.